Hey everyone, welcome. I'm so
Hey,
glad.
John.
Who is that today?
It's Katie Austin.
Hey Katie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Really, really good. It's good to hear your voice.
It's been a while. How was your vacation?
It was just fantastic. It was really, really good. Have you ever been to Kiowa?
Oh, yeah. Well, we used to go every summer when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah,
have, but went recently, maybe a couple years ago. It's changed a lot since
yeah,
I
it
remember.
really has. So this will interest you because Susie used to go down there and we would redo properties. So we redid 5 properties down there.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, we had a blast doing it. It was really, really good. It was really fun. So Katie, make this as interactive as you want today, but it is kind of fun knowing you're in the audience because when I think of people that are grateful, you kind of hit the high end of the meter based on my dialogue with you, which I think is super cool. But I'm going to talk about just a couple of books that have been really high impact on me, and one of them is called The Gratitude Principle. And this is a Dan Sullivan book. And so it's really interesting, Katie, because I go back and I think about my life and the progressions that I made through my life. And often the times when I needed to make a change the most is when I had the least gratitude. And I would find myself falling into a trap where I wasn't being very nice to the people I was working with because I wasn't grateful for them. I
Yeah.
wasn't grateful for how I was spending my time because I didn't think I was adding that much value. And I wasn't that interested in the work. And I usually found that those were the periods of time where my gratitude went way down. And the issue was I was in the wrong place, but I kept blaming the people around me, as if it were their issue, when in hindsight, they actually were in the right places doing the right things. And it was really me that had the issue. And so it was, not the most exciting thing to self discover, that this was my issue, not everybody else's.
Yeah.
And I was the person that would show up and just be in a crappy mood. And and it is interesting, Katie, because when you chase it, you'll find that if you're getting out of bed in the mornings and you're not super excited about what you're doing right out of the chute, it's a pretty strong indication, that the gratitude is missing.
Yeah.
And so, the good
Yeah.
news is when I got into this program with Dan Sullivan, and they basically introduced this book to everybody that was in it. And that's a powerful program. I don't know if you've looked at it, but it's a really powerful program. But he basically started to say, hey, look, if you don't wake up in gratitude, there's no way in heck, you're really going to engage in your gift zone, where you're really, really talented, and you're not going to play up, because if you don't have gratitude and you're not in your gift zone, then you're really not going to contribute at a high level today. And I do think the biggest thing that they did for me is they got me to a point where every 90 days I was taking a really good inventory of, hey, how did I do against my most important goals? And how did I do in terms of really, really helping people that mattered to me? And if I really felt like I was in the zone and grateful for, everything around me, then I easily hit my goals,
Mhm.
but if I didn't have that gratitude, I didn't, you know, and so, the other thing that I was finding, Katie, was I found that people weren't listening to me as much as I thought that they should. They weren't responding to me as much as I thought that they should. And it was pretty much, an indication that the value that I was bringing in that particular time frame just wasn't that great for the people that were around me. And again, when I finally
Yeah.
started to recognize and deal with that, it was like transformational because I started to say, hey, I'm not going to live my life that way. I'm going to make sure that I literally get up every day with an extremely positive attitude, and that I am really embracing these wonderful gifts that I have around me, which include my talents, but it also includes that gift of time that I've got, which is how do I make sure that that time is recognized as being precious? And then also, how do I really, really show gratitude to the people that are around me? And
Hmm.
Katie, the other thing that I will tell you is it can be contagious if you're tolerating what you're doing.
Yep.
You're tolerating who you're with. You're tolerating the kinds of activities that you're in. You will bring it home.
Hmm.
And what I found was I just wasn't treating, and this isn't the most impressive thing to say either, I just wasn't treating Susie and the kids as well as I could and should have. I was kind of taking out, the fact that I was doing things I didn't want to do. I was kind of taking it out on them without really even knowing that I was doing it. Yeah. And
I
Katie,
mean,
I think the other thing that
we've
I'd
all been
share.
there. I just, yeah, even as much as gratitude's such a thing. It's just sometimes you really do have to go back and recenter on that because you get, swayed a little bit sometimes. So,
And Katie, I think the other thing that really helped me was I think, Sullivan pointed out why to add value to other people, you had to have gratitude,
yeah.
because it's an entire mindset. When you have gratitude for the people around you, they will play up.
Hmm.
They will feel that energy from
Yeah.
you. They will feel that you really care and want to work with them. And Sullivan actually talked about in one of his discussions that if he's going into a tough meeting where there's potential conflict, he
Hmm.
will write down 8 things. I don't know why he picked 8, but he'd write 8 things down about why he had gratitude for that person before he went into the meeting. And he said the beauty of it is it would diffuse the potential conflict, because the
Yeah.
person would sense when he walked into the room that they were valued, and even though there were issues that needed to be discussed and resolved in the meeting, that overall idea of I value you, you're important to me, and I'm grateful that you're in my life will just
Hmm.
manifest itself,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I've been working with a team member who's really pretty critical sometimes, and but but having that mindset of being critical, I realize it's kind of a personality trait, and that because they are sometimes they're very exact, and they are very detailed and focused. So there are a lot of benefits to what they bring to the table. But sometimes if you're, especially someone like me, that you probably you like being told you're doing well, or this it helps, like I guess most people. But so it's been interesting to just, in one time I just diffused it, and I thought, I can, I see this email coming, I know she's gonna chat, but then I just kind of diffused it and said, she's trying to do a great job, I know she, and just really accepting of who she was, and to not take it personally too. So that has really helped just recently. I'm just pulling that out because that just recently happened. Is just, not expect negative, bad things, but just switch it and say, here are all the great things about her. And here's, and just switch it. And then when she responded, I don't know, it just diffused the situation.
That's really cool.
So,
I think the other thing that we often forget, Katie, is when we're on the other side of somebody like that, so often they're that critical of themselves.
hmm.
And the reason that's important to know is that person has to live with them as their own supervisor and coach. And so often what we can begin to do with them is to reflect back to them, do you realize how tough you are on yourself? Because if they don't necessarily see how tough they are on the people around them, but I can get them to at least see that they're tough on themselves, it's a start. Because sometimes you have to ask the person, do you enjoy being your own supervisor? And some people will look at me and go, wow, I don't. I'm tough on me all the time. And so what you begin to see is there's some magic there that you can begin to say, hey, it might be easier for you and your teammate if we get you back to where you really gifted, and how and when do you bring those gifts to the table. And sometimes what we'll see, and I give you an example. I have a client that I think the world of, but he has intellectual in his strength finder profile. He's got many strategy cards, so the fourth domain, but he's got intellect as I think his number one or number two. And Katie, what I would see is he would always refer to other people as being stupid. And he didn't really even know that he was doing it. But what I said to him one day is I said, do you know you kind of dishonor your gifts? And to take it a little further, you kind of dishonor God every time you tell everybody else in your mind that they're stupid. Because it just means to me, you don't recognize that you have this incredible gift of intellect. And he had analytical as being his other. So when you look at intellect and analytical, often the world looks screwed up to you. And I understand that. Or often people don't look smart. But it's like, those are your gifts. That's what makes you unique. And if you don't start by recognizing, hey, this is my gift in this conversation, this is what I'll bring and give to these other folks.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
Isn't it fun? But it is
Yeah.
interesting. Once we got him to start to see it, and he started to flip, then all of a sudden people were more open to him because they knew down deep he thought they were stupid. And so they wouldn't ask the questions, or they wouldn't engage with him, so that he really could see the different points of view that were at the table. And then the other thing, and I think this is what you know pretty well, is many of the profiles, especially with a high implementer, there's a perfection card there, and it's like, okay, how do I get the whole team to understand we can do this better without feeling criticized? How can I get them to see that we can go further, do better, and create something really incredible, if we focus on this just a little bit longer, or do it just a little bit better, So that's the beauty of it. But I will tell you, when we go in and we look at entrepreneurial success, and especially Katie, as you keep wrestling through with what you want to do, and frankly, who do you want to be 10 years from now? Because that's really the choice that you're wrestling with. So much of it gets back to, being optimistic, being positive, looking forward, believing that the world is a good place and that there's a place for you in the world. And also believing that there's a group of people that will absolutely love what you bring to them. And so as all that positivity shows up, and it has to start inside you, okay? Because you're not going to attract people that are positive and grateful if you don't have it for yourself first. It's almost this gravitational pull, But what you find is when this starts to happen, the other thing that's so beautiful about it is, and again, this really plays well to your strengths, your ability to connect the dots in ways that other people don't, mean that you'll be able to see the gifts that different people bring to the table and help to coordinate that and bring that together. So this makes somebody even a stronger entrepreneur, because when you have this ability to see the giftedness in other people, and you have this ability to bring ideas and people together in a unique way, that changes the value proposition, which automatically benefits you and the group, because you're going to create more value. And what we're seeing out there right now, I mean, just, it's unbelievable. When you look at the current numbers, across the system, we're really underperforming badly. When you look at the significant deficits that are out there, when you look at the nonprofits kind of starving, when you go in and look at business and just the short-term incremental focus that's going on and the grind that's going on, those are all strong indications that we really can't milk these systems much longer, Katie, and that there's an opportunity for more transformational change.
Mhm.
And so that's the beauty of what we see coming. And at the same time, when you go in and read Fourth Turning, or you read, I've been working on a book by George Friedman recently, and he sees the same thing, just incredible tenure of change. But it's going to take people deciding, well, how do I change individually to capture that and move forward? And that's why the SWOT analysis and the Strength Finder and the Colby all work hand in hand with this gratitude principle.
Yeah.
So it's really good. Hey, Katie, the other thing that that I'll bring up is there's this great book called The Choice, and this is actually a Maxwell book. And he stages this so well because he goes in and really talks about every choice that we really have to make daily to perform at our highest and best level. And he goes in here and really talks about, look, your attitude every day is a choice. How you wake up and the mood that you're in absolutely starts in your head, and it's your choice. And I do know one of the tools I've seen some people use is, when they wind down at night, they'll do two things. They'll list the three things that were just extraordinary about today. So they automatically get into a positive time, point of view. But they'll also write down what are the three really big things that you're looking forward to tomorrow. And so as they kind of drift, asleep, they're thinking about those three things, and their mind will work on that overnight. But when they get up in that next morning and they see those three things again, because it's typically written down, it just like pulls you out of the bed. You're like, I know exactly what I need to get done today.
Yeah.
And I've got these three things I'm really excited about. And then if the excitement's not there, that's also interesting, because it really gets back to, you're either not in the gift zone, or interestingly enough, your why's not clear. And so let's just talk about the why for a second. So, when you get up and you know why you're doing something, the energy just flows right into it. So if you're grateful for this opportunity to be alive, you're grateful for the time that you have to go do the things that you want to do, you're grateful for the gifts that you have, those are all things that really strengthen your why. And so, if you wake up and you're like, yeah, I'm not really into it today. Well, okay. There's probably really good reasons why you're not into it today. And for whatever reason, you're not connecting to what is my why, what is my 3-year future focus, what is my quarterly, and how does that play into my day to day. The other thing I want to talk about, because when I think of husbands and wives, those are the most important mastermind group that you have. So just a reminder, a mastermind group is a group that you talk to that really helps you be the best version of you that you can be. And our hope with Untapped is to build this community over time so that we have that. But the most important mastermind you have is that person that you spend the most time with. And for many of that, it's a husband, wife, significant other, whatever you want to call them. And it's like, well, how are they doing? And how am I playing with them? And do they know how grateful that, that I am, that they're in my life? And, I will tell you, and again, more confessions by John. We got to a point where Jay, our youngest, was grown and out of the house and going to college. And I'm like, well, thank God, finally some time for John, and I never saw the other side of it. And I just was so selfish during that period of time, not recognizing that a majority of that commitment, a majority of that time investment really had come from Susie. And what I really found that is I had allowed my marriage, to grow into more of, what I'll call entitlement. So here's another book, and we'll put all these in the links, called The Entitlement Cure. But I had gotten to a point where, I just expected these things to happen, and I was entitled to that. And really, as I thought back about Susie, I had fallen out of gratitude for her, and I just expected her to do all the things that she did in our marriage. And it was really unfair on my part. But it wasn't until, Sullivan really challenged me with, how do you think? And then Maxwell reminded me, you're really responsible for this. This is your choice every day. And again, we have great content all about habit formation, but all of these are just mental habits. So Katie, when you go in and you look at my 3-year future focus, it starts, first sentence, I'm going to wake up every day with the best attitude of my life, and it's going to get better every day. Because I just recognized that was by far what was going to make the biggest difference for me. If I'm going to add value back to other people, I sure better start with just one great attitude. So, so just to go through some of the basics, what's entitlement? You have to wrestle with that. And sometimes we have it at work, and I one of the things we'll talk about in a few days is I'm going to talk about the paycheck, the entitlement of a paycheck. And we have an awful lot of people out there today that just say, well, I show up to work, I get a paycheck. And it doesn't matter what kind of shape they're in, what kind of contribution they make, what kind of attitude they bring in, how well they're working with other people, whether they're getting results, there's this entitlement around a paycheck. And we could do the same thing at home in terms of who takes the trash out, who washes the dishes, who prepares the food. And it's like, do we really recognize, value, and support the people that are in those roles? And then the other thing that sometimes we have to wrestle with is, did I form a relationship with a taker? And can I fix it? Can I fix it? And that's a hard one, because sometimes the people we love the most can be takers. And to confront that is hard work, and there's just an incredible book by Cloud called Necessary Endings. And I know that sounds really fatalistic, but it really is more about, how do you end relationships that aren't good and convert a taker to a giver. And so often it takes 1 or 2 people to confront them and say, do you see who you are? Do you see that you're regularly taking from other people and you don't give back? Where's the scarcity mindset coming from? Where is your gratitude? Because so often they're takers because they don't have gratitude, and it's because they don't recognize where they're really gifted, or there's a scarcity mentality there, so again, just to go back to my personal journey, and I think I'm working on this even today, having sold Lennox, I still have this belief that there's a scarcity of time. And I'm like, that is just my mind playing games with me. There's always going to be time for the people that really matter. There's always going to be time for the things that really matter each day. And it's more a matter of me getting expectations clear in my head and with the people I care about, so that I reinforce that there really is plenty of time. And I know for me, it started with a scarcity of money concept, where you have to overturn that. But to me, the two were wound together, scarcity of time and scarcity of money. But when you get to a really good place where the gratitude pours in, and you really believe that you have great gifts and people will value it, it turns itself around. It's amazing. And when we talk about gratitude, everybody's got to come up with their own formula. For some, it's very God-based, it's very religious. Others, it's very much family-based. I'm just really grateful to my dad. I'm grateful to my mom. I'm grateful to a sister. I'm grateful to a spouse. Waking up saying, I'm grateful that I have this day. You're not entitled to that day. What are the goodnesses and blessings? And, we're going to put more information in about creating a gratitude journal, so that you basically do this on a more regular basis. And then the other thing that happens is as you're going through your 3-year future focus, and especially your SWOT, when you really begin to see, I've got these great opportunities ahead of me, and I've got this incredible ability with community to work around the things that I don't want to do or other people should do. It's just really self-reinforcing. So Al, thank you. So when we talk about gratitude and wealth creation, I mean, they just go hand in hand. What we know is when it's very, very interesting. When you go in and you look at people's careers and they stall out, so often they stall out because they quit having gratitude for the people around them. And it's really interesting because people will pull back from them. They just won't give to the same degree if they don't feel that gratitude. And then what will happen is eventually on a community basis, people will pull back and the person will quit getting promotions. So I think that's really fascinating, because you go in and you look at, again, just to cite a Maxwell book, there's something called the 5 levels of leadership. And the first level is I have the role and I have the authority. The second is I really have the relationships, including I really know what each person wants in my life and how I will help contribute to that. And again, this gets back to the whole team building exercise of sharing your 3-year future focus and sharing your SWOT with other people, even though that's scary. But it allows you to create a much deeper bond with them and to figure out how do I add value for them, and they learn how to add value for me. But then the third element of the 5 levels of leadership is getting results. And so it is interesting. Sometimes we'll meet with people and they'll have incredible relationship strengths in their domains, but they don't get results. And if you said why, it's because they don't understand that, you're only going to add value for other people and you're only going to gain value back if you create the relationships with the right people in the right way. So hopefully that makes sense. And then Katie, the other thing that we watch is this whole idea of, do I have the courage to write down, I'm going to change my role. I'm going to change how I spend my time. I'm going to change how much I make or how many hours I put in. Because I think the wonderful thing is going on today, a lot of people with COVID are saying, hey, look, I got a lot done with a lot more flexibility and I didn't commute 40 minutes each way to the office. And I think you're watching these big institutions, these big companies really wrestle with, I want you in the office, I want you seated in front of a computer, and I want you going to team meetings person to person, and we're going to watch you, because that's how we're going to make sure you add value. And you're just looking at them going, this is crazy, Bill. Yeah, it's crazy, Bill. Because there's so many better ways to do it. Many better ways to do it. Yeah. And then finally, when you think about this journey, because you're going to have to kind of say, look, I'm going to choose to be grateful and I'm going to choose this abundance thinking. You have to start with your current beliefs, which then cascade down to your attitude and habits. And even this week, I wrote down, my big focus for the next 90 days is I just need to continue to improve identifying which habits I want and making sure that I bring a day-to-day discipline in to performing that habit. And the theory behind this is really simple. If you just get one good habit every 90 days and get rid of one bad habit every 90 days, can you imagine over the course of 10 years, 40 bad ones out the window, 40 good ones in, just how much more effective you would be? How much happier you would be, and the first habit starts with the habit of how I think, and I know for me, like in the mornings, especially if I can put on a YouTube or something like that with people that are very positive and encouraging, if I can't get there alone, that's a heck of a booster shot,
Yeah, it's a good idea, actually.
Yeah. So
Start
it's
them
just back to
positive.
these little tiny habits,
It's the little
connecting,
habits. I know. Yeah.
you know. And at the end of the day, I think so many of us, that want to grow, we're already achievers. We already have a history of doing that. It's more a matter of just getting the right priorities in place and just sticking to them, even as the world tries to pull us off of it. It's just continuing to stick to it. And again, this is why I don't know if you're familiar with the Hyatt Planner, but I think the Hyatt Planner is just dynamite. Um,
I've
you know,
not heard of it.
because, yeah, but using some plan, and the reason I like the Hyatt Planner is because it's a
Hyatt,
quarter, pardon me?
Hyatt, like the hotel,
Yeah,
Hyatt, or
yeah, HYATT. And, one of the things that Allie and I have been brainstorming at some point, yeah, Allie Brayton, was, at some point, would we even have classes on the Hyatt Planner, or just even have weekly sessions where we would have people get together. So like today, I'm in a Michael Hyatt program, and they get me for 30 minutes every Friday. And there's specific exercises that you go through each week. So it's called a weekly preview, where you go in and you list what were my biggest wins for the past week. Then you have what's called an after action review. How far did you get? What worked? What didn't? Then they do a little start, stop, continue. And then they have you do what they call a list sweep. So you go back and you take everything that didn't get done, and you just create an inventory of it. I use an app for that. I use Trello, and integrate that with my planner. And then I just go in and I start to prioritize it. And then they have you go out, look at your calendar for next week and the list. And then they just give you a real regimented system to kind of put this together. And I would say to somebody interested in this, it takes a couple of years to master this, to get the 80 for the 20. But I will tell you that as you just keep working on it week to week, it just gets better and better.
yeah.
But for some people, Katie, just to give you an example, my wife Susie she's a high follow through. She's extraordinarily organized, and she just doesn't need this amount of process, you know, but she'll
Right.
still use it, but she won't use it the same way that I do, you know. But when you look at the Untapped tools and you look at the Hyatt Planner, they almost go hand in hand. So I'm actually in a program with Hyatt right now called Business Accelerator, and it's pretty interesting. I mean, he'll have 90 people on a call on a Monday morning, where they'll just listen to Michael for a half hour. And then he also has an assistant of his run the weekly planner meetings, where everybody just kind of gets together. And then he breaks them into small groups and they talk about their wins for the week. And then they pull them back to the big group. But it's really efficiently run. They do a nice job at it.
It's kind of checks on your accountability and
Yep.
follow through and
Yep. And if you said, John, do you make 4 out of 4 in a month on the Friday sessions? No, it's probably closer to 2 to 3. But just the fact that I do that,
yeah.
connects me with the group and keeps me moving forward. Because I think so much of this, I think, when we look out over the next 10 years, we have this deep belief that these big institutions are going to bust up. We really do believe that a lot more people are going to create their own little mini businesses and work together, in communities in whole different ways. You just don't need the amount of structure these big companies bring all the time. And so I think when you can have a community getting together like that and staying positive and encouraging one another, especially if people go do entrepreneurial work, we think that's really helpful. So if at some point, anybody on today's call wants to know more about Business Accelerator, I'd be glad to tell you about it. So, but I think the other thing that you're watching us do is, I think a personal belief I have, and again, I think most of when you go in and look, I got 4 out of 6 strategy strengths. So pulling together the best elements from these different programs is what I think I do really well. And so I think what we're trying to do is to take the best of Sullivan, best of Maxwell, best of Hyatt, best of Godin, and just other people I follow, and try to keep bringing that back into the community, either on a group basis or in the one-on-one coaching, whatever works
Yeah.
better.
And John, I think that's great. I mean, that's, I think, the biggest help, because quite honestly, I get so overwhelmed by all of these books and all of these insights. I mean, they're all great and they all have their own kind of kind of focus area, but it is challenging to know, when you have limited time in a day, what do I focus on? What book do I focus on first? I mean, I love, but certainly, the gratitude, let's just, that's a good place to start. But quite honestly, it's just, I guess that's what's, um, challenging about some of this is there's so many thoughts and so many books. And I guess you just have to, try to absorb what you can. And
Yeah, I think, Katie, part of what brings that and makes it more achievable is I think the planner would be a good thing for you to look at. And the reason I'm saying that is the planner tries to get you to 3 big things a week that you're focused on and 3 big things a day, and to basically back off on all the other stuff that can pull you in and drag you down. And I think what I have found is that if I stay focused on those things, the probability I achieve my most important goals goes way up. Because the reality for a lot of us, and especially if you're in a bigger organization, you're constantly going to the drumbeat of that bigger organization and getting sucked into their agenda. And frequently, what you're getting sucked into doesn't always add a ton of value for them or you. And it's like, okay, now how can I decide where to be really detailed? How can I decide when to be that perfectionist? How do I get this right? And Katie, I think this is the one other thing we're seeing. Some of the big companies, just the bottom lines are not working for them anymore. And it's really a strong indication that all that bureaucracy, all that scale that they've designed in, all of that you have to do it one way is not adding a lot of value, for many, many people. And it's like, okay, how do we give people the flexibility, whether it's where I work, when I'm in the office, how much flexibility can we give them? And so, and it could be sometimes, Katie, you just got to pick up the phone and say, look, this is the one big thing I'm working on right now. I want you to say, John, I want you to go do the reading. Because I spend an incredible amount of time reading and listening to these things. And at times I know I can have a fire hose effect. And if you just said, look, I need you to do the reading and come back and really distill it down to a handful of things that are really going to be important to me, I'd be glad to do that. That's fun for me. That's a lot of fun.
delegate.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's just back to, by design, there's a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
And you want to do what you love to do the most. And Katie, often when you go look, a lot of the things that we'll do ourselves are not compounders. By compounders, I mean, I can go do this, but it doesn't take my skills, my knowledge, my experience, or my relationship set up on a long-term basis. So it's a one-off. Well, it's not going to compound. Let's go find somebody that would compound for and ask them to do it for us. So a great example would be you may have a certain issue that you're working with, and you may say, look, I need you to go do the homework on this for me, or find the right person for me to talk to. The beauty of it is I will enjoy doing that work. And when I do it for you, the probability it will benefit somebody else goes way up. So when you look at our business model, the beauty of this is I learn from everybody that we talk to, and then I can figure out, how can I take that learning and reapply it back? The other thing, Katie, you'll laugh. I was Rush chairman for 2 years in the fraternity, Rush chairman for their fraternity council. I loved connecting people. That's clearly one of the things, for me to hear where somebody wants to go and to understand how to help them and who to connect them with is frankly just a lot of fun for me. So, all right, I think that's it for today. That's it. Thank you for everybody being here today. I'm all excited. So good seeing
Yeah,
you.
thanks for all your insights and talking through all this. It's really
Glad to
helpful.
do it. And if there's any questions or anything I can do one-on-one, just let me know. That sounds really good. See you guys.
Okay, bye,
Bye.
Thank
thanks.
you. Thank you.